Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of What You Talking About. This week I am joined by Evie Hollis, a notable CrossFit athlete who recently came sixth in this year's semi-finals in the Asia region. From starting CrossFit as a teen to competing at a high level and coaching athletes to the games, Evie has done it all. We chat about her career so far, why she still comes back every year, and what it's like competing over the different regions. Before we begin, a quick thank you to our partners Third Z. Using their sleep recovery collagen has been an absolute game changer to me and my routine, and it could be for you too. Head over to thirdzee.com and use the code WODSLEEPER for 20% off. As always, don't forget to like, rate and subscribe to be the first to hear all about our new episodes and content. Enjoy! Evie, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm doing good. Just had a little bit of a chilled morning, had my morning coffee. So yeah, I'm good to go.
Nice. I'm going to say, so you are in the UAE, which as British people, I'm assuming you get very lovely hot weather and it's all very nice there. Am I right to assume?
Yeah, well, for most of the year, the weather is amazing here. But at the moment, we're just going into summer, which, to be fair, I still prefer it over the wet and the rain of the UK.
Yeah.
But it's getting pretty hot, so like above 40 degrees. So it's not the best in terms of like actually doing things outside. But at least the sun is shining, so can't complain.
Well, to be fair, I have to back up England. It's sunny here at the moment.
Wow, a rare occasion.
It's such a rare occasion. I want to say like we're kind of fresh out of semis. It's been a few weeks for you now. This year you competed in the Asia semi-final, which must have been like really different for you. How was the experience of semis like? Do you feel recovered? You were obviously at the Africa semi-finals too as a coach, which we'll go into, but like have you relaxed? Are you back to normal?
Yeah, well, after the competition, I had like a full week off. I like to do that after competition, just have a full week off. And I literally don't even do like a single stretch. I just have like sloth life for a week. But then I found myself kind of towards the end of the week, just mentally, I just wanted to go and like work out, not train, but just move. Because it baffles me how like there's a lot of people out there that don't work out at all, and I'm just like what do you do? I was so bored. Apart from obviously working and stuff. Then I kind of got back into it, but just doing whatever I wanted, like jumping in with people, maybe doing a class. If I wanted to train, I did. If I didn't want to, I didn't. And then I flew to South Africa to coach my friend Gemma in her semis. And then when I traveled back again, obviously it's quite a lot of travel, the stress of competing all added up, and then I got sick. So then I had to have a week off of nothing. And then this is actually my first week back on actually following a program.
How like we'll talk about semis a little bit more, but you were so close, but unfortunately didn't get to the games this year. How do you then like get back into the motivation of like going into a program and training again when your season kind of ends?
Yeah, well, I guess that's why it's so important to take that time off after the competition. Because, like, I won't lie, I had a week or so of, feeling sorry for yourself, all the thoughts going through your head, like, should I go for it again? Is it worth it? Like, all of this stuff. And then naturally over time, you'll start to get the answers. Like, I just, towards the end of that week, like, all I could think about was training or what can I do better for next year? And it made me realize, no, I actually do want to go for it again. And at the same time, I had a call with my coach, Anthony Monks, and just kind of reflecting on the weekend and like some things that maybe just didn't click on the floor, which we can address in the off season. And then again, not rushing back into it. I give myself at least a month. I think it was a month from the competition to now before I even think about starting to follow like an actual program again.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? Because one thing, and I people are probably sick of hearing me say this, but I find it crazy with CrossFit is that the elite athletes your whole kind of, I don't want to say your whole career, but the kind of pinnacle of it is based off of one weekend in a year or two
Yeah.
weekends in a year. And there's no other sport that's like that. And as you say, like if it doesn't go your way, that's it for another year. And yes, we're very lucky. It's a growing sport. There's lots more going on now, and people can have a career out of that kind of niche season. But it must be so hard, and I think it's really important to talk about taking the time off and actually going, do I want to do this again? Because it's really like impactful on your entire year, I suppose, outside of training as well. Do you find that?
Yeah, and like I feel like throughout my kind of CrossFit career as an athlete, I've kind of really put the semi-finals and the CrossFit Games on this pinnacle where the whole year you're avoiding like, oh, I don't want to do that comp because it's going to ruin my training for this and for that. And then I was just talking to Luka Dukic. So he lived in Abu Dhabi briefly, and he's one of those athletes who he just competes the whole year, here, there, and everywhere. And he was just talking to me about how, like, for us, obviously, well, for me personally, I'm not a full-time athlete. I work, I'm a personal trainer, online programmer, coach classes in order to be able to compete and things like that. And then throughout the year in the region of UAE or in the Middle East, there's a lot of off-season comps where you can actually earn quite a decent amount of money. And that's the reason Luca does all these competitions, because he can actually like earn a lot of money, and the pretty good competitions. So last year I just was like, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to go for it and like do as many competitions in the region as possible. Did pretty good. Like managed to earn a fair bit of money, which was great. Then obviously the flip side of that is like maybe I wasn't at my peak for the semi-finals. Like this is something I talked about with my coach about how instead of maybe going on like a proper off season where you're just building that base, you're not at your true fitness all year, and then you peak for the semis. I feel like this year we kind of did more CrossFit the whole year, competed most of the year, but it meant I was maybe 85% the whole year, including the semi-finals. So that's kind of the give and the take. But I just remember Lucas saying that he would struggle to only focus on this one weekend of the whole year and not have anything in between. So yeah, I guess it's just finding that balance between the two.
It is, and as you say, people have got to make a living. You've got to be able to. We all know that competing in CrossFit is not not the cheapest, especially when you go into semis and the games, etc. And it is really important. But yeah, you're right. It's finding that balance, because I've had conversations with a few people recently who have done the same and then ended up not making it to the games or back to the games, and they've gone, oh, hang on, have I not done it? And it's weird because I think as well, for people who don't compete at an elite level, you think, oh, how is competing in November going to affect you in, what are we in, May, June? But actually it really does, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And just in terms of like, so for example, I've been lucky enough to receive invites to Dubai Championship twice. And that's the type of competition where it's no joke. The level of athletes is so high. It's all CrossFit Games athletes. So me personally, if I get an invite, I'm thinking, okay, I need to actually train and peak kind of for this competition, because I don't want to go out there and like not be fit alongside like what Laura Hovarth and people like this. So then instead of me spending like 6 months doing that base building, maybe there's specific holes that I need to fill, I'm actually then changing the whole training program to peak me for this competition. And although yes, I'm going to be better at Dubai, that means I've missed out on these extra months of that base building, which could then benefit me come May time for the semis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting concept, because I think we're so lucky that CrossFit is growing, and we've got, as you say, events like Dubai, which are, they are well versed on the calendar now. There, people are watching them, people are prepping for them. But actually, yeah, if your goal is still getting, to the games, which ultimately It is, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
It's really hard to then like balance that. But let's go back, because we were just saying before we started recording, nowadays we're seeing a lot more teen athletes, and very lovely in the UK that we're getting a lot more teen classes and kids doing it. But when you started CrossFit, I can't imagine there were a lot of people your age doing it. So were you 14? Is that right?
So I was 15 when I first started, just about to turn 16. But basically, the reason I got into CrossFit was, well, one, my parents, they did it before me. So they went to the CrossFit classes, and I actually played football. Football was my sport. I was quite high level football. And every year we would get these evaluations at the end where the coach would just like tell you about your performance in the season, what you did well, what you need to improve on. And it's funny thinking about it now with what I'm doing. But my kind of weakness every year was always the fitness side of things. So they would always say skill was good, vision was good, but you need to work on your fitness. So with that in mind, I joined CrossFit because I thought, oh, okay, well, my parents seem to be getting pretty fit from this, so I'm going to join, get fitter for football. Especially because every year we had to do the yo-yo test as part of our trials, which is pretty much a bleep test.
I am going to say, is it like a bleep test? It gives me
Yeah.
PTSD from school, that.
Oh, it's horrible. But the main thing is no one wants to be last. No one wants to be the first person out. So that was kind of my main motivation to go to CrossFit. And then I just found like I just loved it straight away. I was pretty good at certain things. Like on my first session, I actually did a strict pull up, and like the coach couldn't believe it. But I think personally for me, when I was growing up, I was like a tomboy, so I was always playing football with the boys, doing every sport possible. So I kind of had quite a good athletic base. And then started like joining, say, the competitor class and things like this. Did a few competitions, and then I just started to not enjoy football as much. Loved CrossFit a lot more, and then I just started to kind of go for CrossFit and actually change my whole career path. Like I was meant to do music at college, and then a week before we enrolled, I actually changed to personal training.
Wow. I love that, because I think I know obviously like nowadays it's quite common for people to go into a CrossFit gym at 15 and do it. But I think especially in the UK, we're very or we were as a British society very like, oh, you go to school, you go to uni, like you don't, your hobbies are maybe like to do with school. Like fitness was never really that encouraged. I don't feel like, even when we were at school, like you would do your sports, but you wouldn't ever be like, right, we're gonna go to the gym, we're gonna get you fit, are we gonna do this? So I love that you kind of like went with your parents. That's the bit that's getting me. It's like with your parents and doing that, because also I think a lot of parents, and I may be really wrong here, but it's a very intimidating, it can be a very intimidating place to go into a CrossFit gym. And, you know, there's potential dangers. CrossFit's very safe, everyone. But, you know, like not a lot of parents would encourage their 15-year-old daughter to like go in and get fit and lift weights and do this. And not a lot of teachers and coaches would have done that either. And I do, as I say, I think that's changing. But it's really nice that that was your experience of it. Do your parents still do CrossFit now? Like, are they still
Yeah, my mum does. So they actually live in Spain now, and she goes to a CrossFit gym in Spain, which is pretty cool as well. My dad, he's more kind of, he does football and paddle and things like that now because he had a few injuries. He'll always tell you about his knee if you meet him. But yeah, it's really cool that they do it or have done it, because they're really like involved as well when I go to these competitions or I'm telling them about my training. Like they actually understand, which is great. I think there's a lot of my friends, they'll be like, oh, I told my mum that I made the CrossFit semi-finals, and obviously she has no idea what it's about. Whereas my parents actually know about it, which is great.
And they understand the scale of it, I think, isn't it? Because for a lot of people, they'll be like, I've never heard of that, so it can't be that big a deal. But it's such a huge deal, and it's really nice. And I do it. I'm like, oh, I have to speak to this person, and they're like, something. Like, no one's got a clue. I'm like, okay, guys, it's fine. But as a 15-year-old, because I look back at me as 15, and I I was into my sports and everything, but I would never have. I don't think I ever would have had the confidence to like walk in to a gym and just kind of crack on. Like, how did you find the experience? Were you intimidated by it? Like, was it quite an easy transition into the gym for you?
I wouldn't say I was intimidated, but one thing that I always tell people with how CrossFit changed me as a person is I used to be that type of person where, so if you go to the hairdressers and your hairdresser asking you all the questions, and you're like, a lot of people, they'll talk to the hairdresser non-stop. I was kind of that kind of teenager who, if they'd ask me a question, it would be like, yeah, like a one-word answer back, and I wouldn't really converse with them. And then I found, after joining CrossFit and being there 5-6 months, all of a sudden, like, I'm the one asking the hairdresser questions, and just being a more confident person in general. And I think that was just because, like you said, I was the only 15-year-old there. I was always around people older than me, and I think it just helped mature me as a person. And obviously the community of CrossFit is so great. Yeah, I think it really helped develop me as a person as well, not just as an athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're seeing that a lot in the teen athletes now, as it gives you a certain sense of confidence and probably like socializing that you don't get, because you're socializing with adults and not just people of your own age. And
Yeah,
so
100%.
going into college or university and doing like personal training and not music, what was like the reaction to that around you? If you'd had, like, how long had you been planning to go and do music?
Like, for a while, because growing up, I had two options. It was either I was going to try and get a football scholarship to America, because at that time, women's football in the UK was like nothing. Like, everyone had to still have a job. You were either you're a teacher or whatever, and still playing football. So the only way for me to actually have a career would have been to go to America. And then on the flip side of that, I was really into my music. So like singing, playing guitar, playing drums, and really enjoyed that as well. And yeah, that was kind of the career path I decided I was going to go down. But then I just really found a passion for, I knew I wanted to be a CrossFit coach. And I knew that I need to also, I can't just go and do my CrossFit level 1. I need to further my qualifications for the future. So that's why I went into the personal training course. And then, yeah, luckily my family and everyone was super supportive. And yeah, they backed me up with it.
Do you think, and like, I think it's amazing, and I really hope everyone else does, but do you think, had your parents not done CrossFit, they would, I'm sure they would have been supportive, whatever, but do you think there would have probably been a bit of uncertainty around it for them had they not known about CrossFit and known, oh, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, potentially. I think because it's hard to understand something if you don't know it completely, which is what we see a lot of people who've never done CrossFit before. They have these images in their head of, oh, you have to be super fit to go and do CrossFit, or you're going to get injured straight away, when it's not the truth. So yeah, they could have been a little bit skeptical of that if they didn't fully understand it.
Yeah. And so was coaching obviously was always like, that's what I want to do. Where did the competitive streak come from? Like, obviously I've seen that football background and, always playing sports probably has a little bit of something to do with it. But where did the competitive side of your career start?
So I guess it was, so when I first started, I was 15. The coach, Lee Howe at the time, he wouldn't allow me to go like heavier than a 6 kilo kettlebell, heavier than a 7 kilo bar, and while I was young. And then I remember we were doing tryouts for the gym's team for some competition. And I just said, oh, can I join? Like, can I do these workouts? And I remember he was like, well, you can, but you'll probably have to scale like most of it. I was like, yeah, okay. And the first workout came out, and it was clean and jerk at 42.5 kilo, which I'd never lifted ever, and then pull up, and it was like an AMRAP. And then I remember Lee coming into the gym, and he just said, Evie, just come, just try and pick that bar up. And then I just did it, no problem. And he was like, okay, you can do this workout. So I did the workout, and I actually came first in the whole gym on that workout. Then there was other workouts which I did terrible. Like at the time, I couldn't do an overhead squat. My mobility was so bad from CrossFit. But I ended up being on the B team. And then that was my first experience of competition, and I just loved it. And then this is also how what you were talking about before, how back then there wasn't much teenagers doing CrossFit. There was a CrossFit competition called the Teen Gauntlet, being advertised at CrossFit 3D in Manchester. So I went along to it. There was only me and one other girl in the girls, and then for the boys there was only one boy. So there's three of us, and we did this competition. There was maybe five workouts, and I had no idea that our results were going to get put onto a worldwide leaderboard with the rest of the world, and from there the top 10 would get invited to the CrossFit Games. And basically I ended up qualifying. And I remember my parents got an email saying I'd qualified to go and compete at the CrossFit Games. So it wasn't called the Teenage CrossFit Games at the time, it was the Teen Gauntlet. And I remember my mum told me they weren't going to tell me because just because of how expensive it is, and they weren't sure if we could afford it. And then in the end, what happened was the UK CrossFit community, they said, set up a GoFundMe page and we'll all donate. And it was unbelievable, the support that I got. Like everyone in the whole of the UK community just donated. And we raised like well over £1,000. And then that actually got me to go, and I went to the 2013 CrossFit Games, competed in the Teen Gauntlet, and then I got to watch the rest of it, which was extra special because that was the year that Samantha Briggs won as well.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that because I wanna touch on that in a second. But at that time, I can't believe 3 people. I mean, 20. I can when you look at it like 11 years ago, but how I love that your parents weren't going to tell you as well. Sort of thing my parents would do. But going to the games, like, did you how much did you understand like the scale of the games? Were you well versed in like who was competing? Because it wasn't, now you can go online and you can see everything about the games and all these athletes, but 10 years ago it wasn't really a thing. Like you'd be kind of watching the archives almost, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so I was very much into CrossFit, and like I'd do my research, or I'd spend evenings watching YouTube videos of CrossFit Games, or like teaching myself how to do certain movements. So I was very aware of like how amazing it is to just go and watch the CrossFit Games. But I had no idea really what the competition thing was that I was doing. So when I went, I was 16, but the other girls in my category, I think they were like 18. Most of them were 18. I was the youngest in my category. And I also was so the girl who won was Maddie Rogers. I don't know if you know of her, like the Olympic weightlifter now.
Yeah.
She won. Because I remember there was a 1 rep max clean. And at the time, I PB'd, I hit, I think, 70 kilo, but it was like starfish, like one of the worst cleans you've ever seen in your life. And then she came over and just like, boom, 90 kilo, 100 kilo, like perfect squat clean, which all makes sense now.
Absolutely.
But I think it wasn't until I actually went and I watched that I realized how like much of a spectacle and how amazing it is actually being there at the CrossFit Games and competing at the CrossFit Games.
Yeah, and even like in 2013, it was, as much as it's completely humongous now, it was still really big back then for a sport of its size. And yeah, how special that you got to watch Sam win. And I want to touch on it because I recall, so when she retired, her final competition at Strength in Depth, which was 2022 semis. You were there competing with her. How full circle was that for you?
Yeah, so the competition that I mentioned when I got into the B team of our gym, this is when I was still 15 or 16. So it was divided we fall competition, and Sam Briggs was actually competing at that same competition in her team. And I met her. I remember I got a photo with her. And I was the youngest competitor to ever have been in that competition. And from that, afterwards, she actually reached out to me, and she used to do these seminars, weightlifting seminars and things around the UK. And she just invited me to come to her seminars, and she would help me with them. If I was doing like another teenage comp, she would like show up, and then obviously trying to help me and be supportive of me. So we kind of created like a really good friendship there. And then at the 2000, I think it was the 2013 regionals, the owner of our gym, Lee, he competed as well. And at the end, Sam gave him her name sign, and she wrote on it, to Evie Hollis, keep training hard, and one day this can be you. Obviously, such a motivational thing for me. So then it was super special for me to actually be able to compete alongside her. Like I'm gutted that I never got to actually compete at the games with her. That would have been even better, but it was really cool to be there alongside her at the semi-finals.
Yeah, it was a really special moment, and I think as you say, like you've reflected on it there from getting you to the games, how good the UK community is, and I think we really look after our own. And Sam she's such an incredible incredible person in the sport, and particularly in the UK. And I was there, and it was such an amazing semi-finals all round, of course, but like that ending that everyone did for her was really special. So I can imagine for you it was very, very cool. I want to touch, because you, of course, so that was a European semi-final, because of course we're British, but this year you were competing in an Asia semi-final. So just to touch on it, at what point you've gone into being a competitive CrossFitter? I know you've traveled a lot, you've lived in a lot of different places, haven't you? How did you, like, did you follow CrossFit, or did you kind of, when you were traveling, go, I'm gonna go here, and then hope to find a CrossFit gym and a job? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically, as soon as I came from college, so at 18, I pretty much got offered a head coach job straight away at CrossFit Telek in Hartlepool, because I was doing part-time coaching at CrossFit Teesside, and the same owners owned Telek, and they offered me the head coach job. So I kind of went straight from college into head coach at CrossFit gym, and I was head coach for maybe a year, and then basically there was a guy called Tom Wilson, who he's from Hartlepool, but he opened a CrossFit gym in the Caribbean, one of the British Virgin Islands, called Tortola, and the gym was called CrossFit Castaway. I didn't know him, never met him before, but he came home at Christmas time, and he came to Telek, joined some of the classes that I was coaching, and then from there he just kind of got in touch and was like, I really, really liked your coaching. I'd love you to come and coach at my gym in the Caribbean. And obviously, there's me at 19 years old. Like, what? Like, what is happening? Obviously, talking to my parents, everyone's just like shocked, thinking like, what should I do? And then I just decided I was going to go for it. So at 19, this was the first time leaving home, and I moved across the world, and ended up coaching CrossFit over there, which was great. Loved it, loved the life. I was there about a year, and then we got hit by Hurricane Irma. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. At the time, it was the strongest hurricane in Atlantic history, and like it destroyed everything. Like we were all very lucky to even like have survived it. But the gym was destroyed. Most of the island was destroyed. And because of that, I had to leave. From there, I actually went to Guernsey, so an island between England and France, and helped set up a CrossFit gym there, and was the head coach there for 6 months. Then Guernsey wasn't really for me. I left. I ended up actually traveling Thailand for a month, unrelated to CrossFit, just traveling Thailand with a backpack. And then I ended up getting a job at CrossFit GST in Wigan, so learning from the likes of Stephen Fawcett, Jonathan Buller, which was a great experience. And actually, I think that was the turning point which really improved me as an athlete, and started to change. Like, the lifestyle you have in the Caribbean is a lot different to what you do in Wigan. So obviously not as many kind of nights out, socializing, boat party, things like this. So I started to really go up as an athlete. And then it was 2 years since the hurricane. The gym was finally rebuilt and at a point where they had enough members back, they could then get me back as a coach. So as soon as Tom offered me it, I was like, yeah, because I loved it. So I went back, and I got there in the December, and then it was February, March time that COVID hit. And because of COVID, unfortunately, I lost my job there again for the second time, and went back to the UK during lockdown. And I just knew, I was like, you know what? No, like, I do not want to be here right now. Like, I want to continue my traveling and seeing the world. And I was thinking to myself, right, you've had a hurricane and you've had a global pandemic. Maybe the Caribbean's not for you. You should try somewhere else. And I knew of a few people from GST who had moved to Vogue Fitness in Abu Dhabi. So I just talked to them and basically was like, okay, I'm just going to apply. And then ended up straight away getting some interviews, and then got offered the job. And then I moved to Abu Dhabi, which is where I've lived for the past 4 years. But it was purely a lifestyle and a work decision to move here. I didn't move here thinking, oh, if I live here long enough, I'll get an exemption and I can compete out of Asia. Like, that was never on the cards. The reason I moved was to better my lifestyle and for work purposes. And then it just kind of led to this right now.
And I think, like, it's such a, I was going to say it's such a random place to go, but actually I think in a CrossFit world, it's really not, because as you say, there's a lot of opportunity out there. Vogue is one of these gyms that everyone's heard of. Like, I think especially, again, probably in the UK community, because we've seen a lot of like UK athletes go out there, and as you say, from JST, etc. But I love that, and I want to touch on obviously the fact that you said there you didn't do it to get an exemption, which I want to ask about, because we've seen it with the bigger athletes in terms of, you know, captains competed in America and Europe, and Tia's of course competed in, you know, all this, but we don't see it very often for other athletes. And actually, for your, as you say, your situation, it wasn't to compete in the Asia semi-finals. It was, no, I work here and I live here, and okay, cool, I'm now competing in Asia semi-finals. So at what point did you make that decision, like in the season, that actually I'm going to take that exemption and compete in Asia and not compete in Europe like you have done previously?
Yeah, so not last year, but the year before semis, our gym at the time, so I was still working at Vogue, we had a team who went to the Asia semi-finals, and they ended up qualifying for the CrossFit Games. And I just remember at the time, like, there was those guys, and then people from Dubai, like all my friends, were all going to the Asia semi-final to compete. And I remember just being so jealous, just because of how fun it would have been to just be there with my friends and with the community that I live with, and compete in like these local comps. And at the same, as they were all going together to Asia, I had to fly back to London. And obviously I've been away from the Europe competition scene for so long. It's great catching up with old friends and things like this, but there's a lot of like obviously new athletes that I don't really know of, and it felt more foreign to me to be in the Europe semi-final than it would have been if I went with everyone that I see every day to go to the Asia semi. So I remember just thinking, oh, God, I really wish I could have gone with all my friends there. And then I think the year after, I probably could have applied for an exemption, but I know the rule was 3 years, and I just missed out. 1 second, there's an aeroplane. It's pretty loud here. I missed out by like maybe a month or 2 months, and I just thought, you know what, that's the rules. Don't apply. Just compete in Europe again. And also at the time, the next year, obviously, I'm definitely eligible. I've been here 4 years, and like I remember just other people telling me like, you're gonna apply, right? Like you'd be stupid not to. And I remember I didn't know if I was gonna or not. And then I just thought to myself, I was like, you know what? It's an opportunity. Like there's no, like everyone knows Europe is probably the strongest region for females, especially, and like it's so hard just to even finish in the top half. Now I'm not saying that it's an easy like it is an easy route in Asia, but it's still hard. Like the girls are legit in Asia. Like if you look at it this year, we had Sehakaya. She was I think 8th in the world in the Open and quarterfinals. And then there's a few other girls who've been to the CrossFit Games multiple years. So it's still a really legit region. But I was like, whilst you've got this opportunity, like this is my home. I've lived here for 4 years. Like why not compete? And that was kind of just my process this year. So yeah, I just went for it.
I think why not? Why wouldn't you exactly? And it's interesting. I'm intrigued because in my assumption, which is definitely going to be wrong, when you watch the like Asia semi-finals online, it doesn't look as, I want to say, like the atmosphere doesn't look as busy as maybe some of the other semi-finals, etc. And I think maybe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but not as many people watch them, like fans over the world watch them. But actually for you, I can imagine is the atmosphere probably even better because you've got people from home and you've got that kind of support system around you, which I'm sure you probably would have had in the UK as well, because obviously your family may have come over and etc. But did you actually feel that for you, Asia had more atmosphere and had more support?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was really nice to like get over there and just catch up with people that maybe I've competed with in Dubai, or there's a good group from the process programming who I'm good friends with. They live in Hong Kong. Those guys are all there competing, which was really cool. But then also the atmosphere. So I can see now why, because at the time I was like, why do they have the semi-final in South Korea and especially in Busan? Because basically you need to fly into Seoul, and then from there you need to get a bullet train, which is like 3 hours to get to Busan. So it's a bit of a faff and a bit of a long trip for quite a few people. But just competing there, you can see why, because it is crazy. It's huge. The amount of people that came to watch, and they treat us all like celebrities. Like even whoever was finishing last in the first heat was getting like huge cheers. It was really cool to see. So many people who came to watch it and were actually really interested in the competition.
I love that. Yeah, you wouldn't ever pitch it, would you, for a South Korea fitness event? But you never know. And
Yeah.
of course, unfortunately, it wasn't the result you were hoping for. Narrowly missed out. How was the weekend in general for you?
So I think me personally, reflecting on the weekend when I've talked to my coach and things, we've identified that like I just didn't perform as well as the other girls. Like at the end of the day, like it's sport, and the girls who qualified, they performed better that weekend than I did. That's as simple as that. There's no excuses. That's what happened. But I think the frustrating thing for me is sometimes what happens at these bigger competitions, I hold back slightly on the floor, maybe hesitate more than I would at, like, I don't know, a local comp where you don't care, you just go for it. Just because there was a few events on the weekend that I actually did better in training than I did on the floor. And if I'd have got those times, it would have been a lot different result. Of course, everyone can say that. But I think it's just something that I haven't clicked it yet on the floor in the big comps. So that was also the reason that I was like, you know what, that doesn't sit well with me. Like, it's left a bad taste in my mouth that I want to, like, I know I'm fit enough and I know I can qualify. It's just I need to perform on the day. So yeah, that's kind of something that motivated me for next year. And I think also, like, I was not shocked, but like, I didn't expect the level to be as high as it was in the whole field. Like, I knew just from the strength of field, like, we got an extra spot. It was 3 spots rather than 2. Because we had, I think, 8 girls in the top 100 in the worldwide ranking. So I knew that maybe like the top 10 is going to be good. But then there was girls from like heats 2, heats 3 that were affecting the results. Like, their results were getting in there. So I think also reflecting on that, it's okay to have a bad event on one event. You can still make it back. And the reason I say that is workout 1, I came 12th. And in my head, I was like, well, I've blew it. Like, there's only 3 spots. And I thought there's only like 3 or 4 girls who are always going to be 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th in all the events. So it's too hard to gain those points back. But then after day 2, I'd climbed my way up to 4th place. So it's kind of, for next year, I know to be a little bit mentally stronger if an event doesn't go my way. Or on the flip side, if you're doing really well on day 1 or day 2, like, you're not safe. Like, a lot can happen on that 3rd day.
Yeah, I think this year's semi-finals, and I don't know whether it was the timing of the events or, you know, maybe that first event really messed some people up, but I think we saw it more this year across the board in that how much can change. And I think, it's so important to know. And I think, as an athlete, I assume I mean, 12th place is still great, but when you are going, right, I need to get top 4 every event, I can imagine it's probably quite a hit. So but I also am really appreciative that you've gone, well, there's no excuses. It's just, you know, that's what it is. Because again, I say we're quite guilty in CrossFit. I think many people are quite guilty in CrossFit for making excuses as to why something didn't go their way. And I really appreciate that you've just gone, no, you know what, I tried, it wasn't the year, but next year hopefully it will be. So is the goal stick with the Asia semi-final next year? Are you planning on moving anytime soon? I know you're pretty settled.
So I'll still be here, because me personally, I've now left Folk Fitness and I work for myself, so I freelance. So I've just gone into that kind of new space, and I'm loving it at the moment. So I won't be going anywhere anytime soon. And then I just really would love to compete at the same semi-final with the same field of athletes, and just really, really go for it next year. And like I said so last year we kind of did a lot more CrossFit, a lot more competitions, didn't do as much of an off season, and we learned from that it probably wasn't the best thing if the goal is the semi-finals. So this year we're switching it up. We're going back from off season. Learning from event 1 was my worst finish, which was the running mainly. Running has always been something I've not been the best at and not finished great on. And I also feel like a workout like that, you've got so many athletes who can just randomly be really good at running. Maybe they're not the best at muscle ups or at snatches, but they're a really good runner. They can they can get in the way and push me down. So I need to get my running to a level that it doesn't matter. It's not going to be like a game ending workout. Like I can still finish high enough that it's not going to spoil my chance of qualifying for the games. So at the moment, I'm going to be running 3 times a week.
You
Building
sound
a
really
strong,
excited about that.
especially in this 40-degree heat.
Yeah.
So yeah, the aim is to build a bit of a bigger base, and just feel a little bit fitter going into the semis, so that I have that confidence when I'm on the floor. And I think also this year I need to work a little bit more on my mindset, maybe work with somebody for that. Because like I said, it's kind of a performance thing on the floor that I'm not clicking with. And then yeah, we'll see what happens at the semis next year.
Yeah. Oh, I look forward to watching it. And before, I'm going to ask you some quick fire questions before I let you go, but I just want to really quickly touch as well on, obviously, as you say, you are freelance and you are coaching, and obviously had a very successful semi-finals as a coach as well, with Gemma. So congratulations for that. I'm sure that was a really nice end to the season. So congratulations for that. So before I let you go, I have to ask you some quick fire questions that I ask absolutely everyone that comes on the show. Firstly, your favourite lift?
Oh, power clean.
Favourite overall CrossFit movement?
Probably power cleans again.
Nice.
Or
No one's ever
maybe,
said the same two things.
yeah, maybe chest to bar pull up.
Nice. Your favourite benchmark WOD?
Oof. Probably Grace.
And if you were to go to the games on a dream team, who would you take with you?
Oh,
It really, it sticks everyone this question.
that's too hard. But what I would say is, for me, if I was going to go team, it needs to be like people that you can have a laugh with, you can get along with, and is the main thing, because I've seen a lot of teams just fall apart as you get close to the competition. And then also just like-minded people who are all going to put the same effort in together. But I can't say who, because I'll probably upset various people by doing that. So I'm going to be Switzerland on this one.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. But yeah, I always say if I had to pick a team, I would not go on fitness. I would go on who I think would be the most fun.
Yeah, you want to have a good time when you're on a team.
It's super fun. Oh, well, Evie, thank you so much. And we look forward to supporting you in whatever's to come next.
Well, thank you very much for having me.